Good morning, beautiful people. I hope you all are thriving, not just surviving. We have a really big show to get to today, actually. We have a lot to talk about, so I might just start very quickly here. So I appreciate every single one of you. If this is your first time tuning in, hello, my name is Scott Johnson. Welcome to Raw and Unfiltered, where I lay out just a lot of the objective facts, science, information, data, statistics. And of course, I do provide my own opinion, my own analysis, and of course you can disagree with that analysis, though you cannot just disagree with objective facts, data, science, statistics. That's just a fact. You can disagree with someone's interpretation or opinion. News needs to do a better job these days of differentiating that dichotomy, but nevertheless, we are going to be getting into a lot of information today. And unlike yesterday, today's live show is going to be very much focused on just reporting what is out there. And right now there's a lot to get to, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. I appreciate every single one of you. Please make sure to send some likes. I want you all to comment below in the live chat, or if you're watching this back as a video, how much have your gas prices gone up? How much have your gas prices gone up? And I want to see if people note, or how much are you paying for gas per gallon around? If you don't know, it's okay. Just comment your best guesstimate in here. So right now, a lot of people are frustrated around everything happening with the Iran war, with what the United States is currently getting themselves involved with. How much is this going to affect Americans? How much are our gas prices going to go up? How are grocery bills going to be affected? How is electricity going to be affected? I'm going to lay all of that out for you. As someone who is trying to be a politically engaged person, sometimes you have no idea where to start in learning all of this. And this is why I do what I do. If you all did not know, policy in the Middle East, any sort of action like that in the Middle East, can literally trickle down to the point where it affects your gas prices, it affects your grocery prices, it affects electricity. And you're like, how does policy in the Middle East really have that much impact in regards to my electricity bill or my grocery bill? We're gonna be talking about that. So I appreciate every single one of you. Please make sure to send some likes. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, here we go. Good morning, beautiful people. I hope you all are thriving, not just surviving. Today, we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff here. So, let's start with here. Jim Jordan downplays higher gas prices due to Iran war. We can live with that. Now, he's of course speaking for the American people when he says we can live with that. But in this exchange, Jim Jordan assured CNN host Cassie Hunt that Americans know we can live without higher gas prices for a time due to the Iran war. During an interview Thursday afternoon, House Speaker Mike Johnson, a Republican from Louisiana, revealed that President Donald Trump had said he expects the operation in Iran to come to a close soon, simultaneously calling it a war, but then also a temporary excursion? That's interesting. So what does soon mean to you? The host asked. Jim Jordan responds with a catch-all answer, evading the definition of soon, calling on Americans to have common sense. I don't necessarily disagree, but I wonder what his version of common sense actually means. He said, I don't know for sure, but look, we want all of the above. We want low gas prices. We want Iran not to have a nuclear weapon as soon as possible. But I think the American people have common sense, and I think they understand that to stop this regime that has for 47 years unalived Americans, Israelis, and killed others, a number of their own people, to stop them from getting a nuclear weapon is a worthwhile objective. So basically evading the whole question. Basically, Jim Jordan justifies rising gas prices as something that we can live with. I'm not here to speak for you or on behalf of you, though I do think a lot of Americans would disagree with that. So we're going to be getting into how this war in Iran raises fuel prices, grocery prices, and electricity prices. So make sure to send some likes. I love all of you. How many do we got in here? 35? Y'all are awesome. I love the people who are just bots that just comment. That's hilarious. Yeah. So, if you all did not know, and I know I'm a little bit all over the place here, but Middle East policy heavily shapes how our electricity and our grocery bills actually go up, how much it goes up or goes down. And we're going to be talking all about that. I feel like I'm repeating myself. Hold on. Let me take a sip of water. All right. I feel like I didn't start off as well. I might actually restart in a sense. Hold on. Hello. How many we got in here? 34? Make sure to send some likes as you're jumping in here. So gas prices are going up, but by how much? You hear in the news that, oh, gas prices are going up. This is going to hurt Americans at the pump. This is going to cost Americans. Okay. My immediate question is, all right, how and by how much? So gas prices are going up. To me, my first question was, by how much? So let me just lay out the objective facts here. The war in Iran will cost Americans more at the pump, as well as on their utility bills and their grocery bills. How is that going to be possible? So Center of American Progress did a really great analysis along with USA Today and Reuters. And so I always encourage people to use those resources because they do a decent job at it. When the Trump administration's reckless war, of course, reckless is an opinionated term, so read into that as you will, on Iran began, all shipping through the Strait of Hormuz was effectively halted, removing 1/5 of the world's oil and gas supply from the market. I want you all to comment below. Do you all know what the Strait of Hormuz is? Actually, hold on, I might put up a poll here. I actually might put up a poll. My goal with these live streams, or if you're watching this back as a video, is to be a little bit more engaging. So, do you know what the Strait of Hormuz is? Yes, no, and then sorta. All right. If you don't know, it is okay. Just make sure to answer the poll here. All right? Make sure to answer the poll. I'm sorry, if you're watching this back as a video, I've probably edited this out, but make sure to answer in the poll here. Are you all familiar with the Strait of Hormuz? It's okay if you don't know. I am not one of these people that's gonna be like, you don't know what that is? Those people, that's actually my biggest pet peeve. My biggest pet peeve in the world is when someone is like angry that you don't know something that you think is so much common sense, but yet, to someone else isn't just common knowledge. And I think that kind of behavior is really annoying. And I'll call out my own people. Of course, you probably have figured out that personally, I am very much a leftist. And there are a lot of people who kind of are a part of that when all of a sudden there's like a show or a movie or something like that and someone hasn't seen it. There's kind of this immediate knee-jerk reaction of, oh my God, you haven't seen that? You haven't lived. I'm like, shut up, but that's just me. So I'm seeing 14 votes in the chat here, which I hope we can get that up a little bit, but it looks like a good majority of you know what the Strait of Hormuz is. And if you don't, that's okay. If you haven't answered because you don't know, which I think is entirely possible, it is okay. So how this all has relevance to the Iran war is the Strait of Hormuz is simply a body of water in which 1/5 of the world's oil travels through. 20%. Now, 1/5 of the world's oil, that's a lot. So if that waterway, the Strait of Hormuz, is closed off, then that really then hampers oil trade production, refining that oil, going out to the market, increases price because of scarcity, and leads to a whole disruption in the global supply chain for oil. So the Strait of Hormuz is simply an area of water in which oil tankers will go through. Now, what's funny is I'm shocked and surprised that Trump hasn't tried to rename this for some odd reason, the Strait of America, just because that's something that he would do, regardless of your political affiliation, we can all admit that. But the Strait of Hormuz is simply a body of water in which 20% of our world's oil supply goes through. Right now, the Strait of Hormuz is effectively closed due to this conflict. Now, because of that closure, we are seeing prices for gasoline and oil also rise as a result. So when the Trump administration war on Iran began, all shipping through the Strait of Hormuz was effectively halted, removing 1/5 of the world's oil and gas supply from the market. Fuel prices throughout the world spiked and will likely remain elevated as long as conflict persists. In the United States, despite record levels of domestic fuel production, prices are more exposed than ever to global fuel interruptions after a decade of building infrastructure meant to link domestic supply to overseas markets. So with all of this, because the Strait of Hormuz is closed, we are seeing spikes in gas prices. Make sure to send some likes. I love all of you. Many parts of the US economy are still dependent on fossil fuels. Fossil fuels simply just means oil, natural gas, other versions of petroleum. Sometimes this can be, what's the other one that's up in Canada? The tar sands. Those are all fossil fuels. And so many parts of the US economy are still dependent on fossil fuels. And it's not just for gasoline for cars, it's also for electricity and also fertilizer. If you all are not familiar, a lot of fertilizer partially is made through oil refineries. So with oil being constricted, that could also raise food prices. Now, I don't think that organic prices for food are going to then become more expensive, because organic means you don't use pesticides and stuff like that, but you could still use fertilizers. So it might not be as affected, but it still could be. As long as this war continues, and perhaps for some time thereafter, American households will pay higher prices at the pump, on their utility bills, and on their grocery prices. So my question is, by how much? Well, let me give you a little graphic here to kind of help you understand. What you're looking at is crude oil, the percentage change in crude oil futures, future prices, relative to the day of hostilities across recent geopolitical events. So you're basically looking at a chart that shows future prices for oil. And people can, of course, do the stock market. They can bet on those futures and those prices. You can see right now the futures are skyrocketing because of Operation Epic Fury. This is what we call the whole war with Iran. They call it Operation Epic Fury. And so compared to other conflicts you can see here are in the gray. I don't know which one is which. I'm gonna guess that this big one is the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So it's just as high and also higher than even that. So right now, prices for crude oil and fossil fuels are skyrocketing because of this conflict. And it's not just crude oil, it's also liquefied natural gas. You'll see that abbreviated as LNG. LNG. So the Middle East also has a lot of LNG refineries. Liquefied natural gas is used for electricity. So we have a lot of natural gas power plants here in the United States. So liquefied natural gas is simply a process in which they take natural gas, liquefy it into watery kind of state, in that sense, for people who aren't scientifically knowledgeable. You take the gas and you liquefy it, and then you send it through a tanker, and then you don't liquefy it, and then you use it. And it's really expensive. It's really expensive. So with liquefied natural gas, also those prices skyrocketing, it's going to lead to then higher prices for those products. Well, utility companies aren't going to want to swallow that loss, so your price for electricity is about to go up more and more. So not only are you paying for more at the pump because we rely on oil from countries around the Middle East, we also are going to be seeing skyrocketing electricity prices. Thank you for the educational information. Thank you. I needed to read that comment. I really appreciate you saying that. I know sometimes these live streams can get a little bit monotonous, but you know, I appreciate you sharing that with me. That means a lot. Those positive comments really mean a lot to me. So, also fertilizer. If you all are not familiar, in order to make fertilizer, they use oil. They use petrochemicals, oil. So fertilizer is about to get more expensive because global supply chains are being disrupted due to this conflict. Which, when there isn't as much of something, then the price goes up. And this will trickle down into our US farming infrastructure, where then farmers, in order to justify it, are gonna raise their prices, and then supermarkets are gonna raise their prices. So you might say, oh, well, I'm just gonna buy organic. Well, typically organic is more expensive anyway, but nevertheless, because fertilizer is gonna become more expensive, then farm products are gonna become more expensive, then you have supermarkets gonna charge more, and then you're gonna pay more. So it really does trickle down across the process, or actually it's more like trickle up against the process. I should say it like that. So Middle East policy literally affects the price of your carrots when you go to the grocery store. It actually does, and it's crazy to think that. I just use carrots as an example just because. So in just the first week after Donald Trump's first bombs on Iran, the average price of gasoline in the United States increased 48 cents per gallon. This is because oil prices are set on the global market, and nearly half of the cost of gasoline is the crude oil in which it is refined. President Trump has dismissed the real impacts that Americans are facing at the gas pump, saying that it is, quote, a very small price to pay for the USA and the world, safety and peace. So he's saying that it's a small price to pay. And before the war began, the Trump administration had already locked in an increase of 37 cents per gallon over the coming decade by repealing the fines for automakers that violate fuel economy standards by eliminating carbon pollution standards from vehicles. So the Trump administration also made a deal with a lot of fossil fuel companies saying, hey, don't raise your prices as much, but we're gonna take out the standards in which you have to refine it so that we can, so that we don't have to raise prices as much. Now, I disagree with that because I think we need to act urgently to then fix the climate crisis by doing everything we can to not have as much pollution. And also, carbon pollution is really bad for human health as well. So anyway, but nevertheless, by eliminating carbon pollution standards for vehicles and by repealing the consumer rebates that helped middle-income families afford electric vehicles. And I totally did not read that correctly. But by neglecting the Strategic Petroleum Reserve and making it harder for people who want to buy electric vehicles to find affordable options, this administration is keeping the American economy susceptible to higher fuel price shocks now and for years to come. How is this going to affect utilities? So I've talked about how it affects you at the pump. How's it going to affect utilities? Well, effects of the Iran war are rippling beyond the Middle East and into the spending habits of American consumers, who are seeing prices surge for gasoline and other items. Though energy prices have increased since near total shutdown in early March of the Strait of Hormuz, a critical and crucial waterway that carries 20% of the world's oil shipments and about 20% of the world's seaborne liquefied natural gas. Most of the oil is from Saudi Arabia and Iraq. Oil prices have began rising March 3rd in the United States, and average gasoline prices have hit $3.59 a gallon on average as of March 11th. Now, I live in North Carolina, so that is obvious, and actually this is, average gasoline prices. So it depends on where you are. If you live in a certain state with a higher population, and it's harder to transport gas there, it might be more expensive versus other places where it's not going to be as expensive. So it really depends on where you are. But how this relates to higher utility bills? Well, the United States uses a lot of natural gas power plants. So if you have oil and liquefied natural gas being restricted through the Strait of Hormuz, which carries 20% of the world's oil and liquefied natural gas, then that's going to increase prices for electricity. You know what? I need a new chair. Because the back of my chair always disrupts the green screen and it makes it look ugly. Please don't shout in the chat. Your comment isn't more important than anyone else's. Facts, okay? We don't need people who are just obnoxious for attention. We don't, okay? Just calm down. It'll be okay. It's a Friday, dude. Relax. Now, in addition to all of this, the International Energy Agency, the IAE, announced plans Wednesday for its largest ever release of oil from its emergency reserves. The agency, which represents 32 member countries, announced plans to release 400 million barrels of oil from its global strategic reserves in an effort to then curb soaring crude oil prices. Now, what's interesting here is there's a graphic that really shows this. The cubes superimposed below the National Mall in Washington, D.C., represent the volume of oil the IEA, or actually, it's supposed to be IEA instead of IAE. Interesting. So they misspelled that there. So the cubes superimposed below on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. represent the volume of the IEA plans to release and the 20 million barrels of oil a day that crosses through the Strait of Hormuz. Oh my God, I cannot English. So what you're looking at here is simply, okay, the world has released 400 million barrels of crude oil strategic reserves because right now, the Strait of Hormuz, which carries around 20 million barrels a day, is effectively closed due to this whole conflict. So they're releasing some of their strategic reserves in order so that we don't have oil prices skyrocket so much overnight. Though I will also point out that our government has been failing to replenish those oil reserves. Love that. So it has unfortunately been the case where our government has just neglected to refill them. But nevertheless, gas and oil price spikes in the United States. So right now, with the US-Israeli war against Iran, we are seeing these spikes. Now, of course, we also saw a spike during the Russia-Ukraine war because we also receive fossil fuels from them. In a sense, it also trickles down with the world supply chain, all that stuff. And so you see these price spikes. The gray is crude oil. Ooh, I need to stretch. Ooh! Oh, that stretch felt good. Sorry. Then you also see the blue is the diesel, and then you also see gasoline in orange. So yeah, this is generally the price spikes. Weekly percentage change in retail fuel and crude oil prices in the US. Please make sure to send some likes. I appreciate every single one of you. I know that sometimes my live streams can be a little bit dry, but today it's a really important day just regarding all of this information. So how has the Strait of Hormuz being closed then led to higher electricity prices? Well, Natural gas power plants generate roughly around 43% of US's electricity, and their fuel and operational costs set at the marginal price of electricity during most hours across the country. The price of natural gas has been increasingly linked to the international markets since the US began exporting liquefied natural gas in 2016. As a result, when the cost of LNG, liquefied natural gas, increases in other countries, it results in higher domestic natural gas prices, raising the cost of home heating and electricity. So what ends up happening is because of the Strait of Hormuz being closed, we, as the United States, don't receive as much for liquefied natural gas. Oh geez, this is so bad. Look at this. I need to fix that. Maybe I'll just stay right here. My green screen is really bad. I apologize. Basically what happens is because the Strait of Hormuz is closed, we don't have as much of liquefied natural gas being imported, exported, and that basically leads to more scarcity and then a higher price for electricity. So that's how that all goes. And then this also affects fertilizer, higher grocery bills, because if you all are not familiar, fuel price spikes also drive up the price of food. In addition to fueling farm equipment and the trucks that transport food to market, fossil fuels are a primary feedstock in the production of fertilizer, accounting for as much as 80% of the cost of production. Although fuel costs account for between 40 and 50% of all variable costs of growing crops in countries like the United States. So it also makes it harder for us to then stop prices in food from spiking. We use fertilizer in order to then enhance and help grow our crops. They use oil and petrochemicals in order to then make fertilizer. So this all literally trickles up into the price of your groceries going up. So it's going to lead to a lot. So literally Middle East policy affects your groceries, and not a lot of people might realize that. Middle East policy in regards to oil affects a lot of stuff. It really does. I love how someone says clueless. Sweetheart, I'm not your enemy. I'm not your enemy. You like to claim that I'm clueless. Why? Why are you claiming I'm clueless? I'm literally citing different pieces of information. That's so funny. The people who often online, sometimes in these comment sections, the people often that are rage typing are the most ignorant people, but they project. So you're claiming that I'm clueless, yet you're the one that's massively showing, basically putting a magnifying glass on your own ignorance. I'm literally citing resources, data, science, statistics, and you have the audacity, the gall, the gumption, the nerve to then claim somehow I'm clueless. This is when I, as a little southern gay guy, go, "Oh, bless your heart." I wonder if they're a bot. Are you a Trump supporter? I am not. I am not. No. I think the madman is crazy. I will give credit where it's due if he does something good, but criticism where it's warranted. The benefits do not outweigh the costs in my own analysis. I count on Scott's News. Oh, thank you. But affordability is a Dem hoax. Right? I appreciate every single one of you. So, all in all, as I have just laid out here, there are Republicans right now that are saying that prices skyrocketing because of this conflict are something that we must live with because of this conflict. Now, I'm not here to tell you whether that's right or wrong. That's for you to decide. In my personal opinion, I think it's really, really silly to frame it that way. As, oh, we have to live with it in that instance. Also, Trump, I cannot believe our president actually said this, okay? Trump brags about high oil prices as Americans balk at the pump. When oil prices go up, we make a lot of money. Where are my hands? When oil prices go up, we make a lot of money. Okay, pre-K pause, as Mr. Williams likes to say. Who is we? Because I don't think I'm getting a direct deposit into my bank account around when oil prices go up. In fact, it's quite the opposite. When I go and fill up my car's name is Ron Burgundy because it's a burgundy color car. Even though he's awful to women, it's supposed to just be funny. Stay classy, San Diego. But when I go and fill up my car, I don't think that I'm seeing when oil prices go up, we make a lot of money. I surely don't. So let me give you what Trump said on his Truth Social. I took this screenshot this morning, 7:54, literally an hour ago. He said this, what's today? Is today the 13th? Yeah. So he said this yesterday morning after the live stream. He said, the United States is the largest oil producer in the world by far. So when oil prices go up, we make a lot of money. Who's we? Who is we? Am I part of the in-group? Am I part of the cool kids? The cool kids that make endless amounts of money by jacking up oil prices because of this conflict? Who is we? We as in the rich, wealthy, Epstein elite class? Or is we like the wealthy petrochemical producers, the oil companies, BP, Shell, Chevron, Exxon? Like, who is we? Because it's certainly not me. Certainly not you. We equals the Epstein class. Yeah, 100%. It's the petrodollar. Yeah. But then he says, but of far greater interest and importance to me as president is stopping an evil empire, Iran, from having nuclear weapons and destroying the Middle East and indeed the world. I won't ever let that happen. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald John Trump. So, I would have appreciated Trump saying a little bit more if he were to say, but of far greater importance to me is Americans having to pay excessive amounts of money at the pump. But see, the thing is, Trump is admitting something here. He says, we are by far the largest oil producer in the world, so when oil prices go up, we make a lot of money. He doesn't mean we, as in you and me, working class, middle class Americans. He means the oil companies. He means their shareholders. He means the wealthy elite 1% that profits off of endless price gouging. He doesn't mean Main Street. He doesn't mean small Trump towns like Sunbury, Pennsylvania. He doesn't then mean small Trump towns in North Carolina that I even have driven through. Whether that's Wilkesboro, whether that is Shelby, like, he doesn't mean like the ordinary Americans. He means the top earning petrochemical mutants that benefit and profit off of the exploitation of foreign countries through polluting them over fossil fuel production. But nevertheless, that's just a tangent. Nevertheless, when he says we make a lot of money, that we does not include you and I, unless you're a petrochemical giant. Now, all that being said, what are the facts here? Right now, the Strait of Hormuz is effectively closed. It's effectively closed. Do you all know what the Strait of Hormuz is? If you do, say yes in the chat. If you don't, say no. It's okay if you don't know. Well, you sit on the internet all day. How useless can you be? LOL. Tell me, what is your definition of all day? What's your definition of all day? Tell me, how late was I on last night? Go ahead. Tell me how late I was on last night. Can I ask you a question? This is not a Q&A live, sorry. So do you all know what the Strait of Hormuz is? If you do, say yes in the chat. If you don't, say no. If you kind of do, then just say sorta. I outlined this earlier. If you all are not familiar, and make sure to send some likes, I appreciate all of you. Likes really help the stream spread, and I work super, super hard to bring you this information. The Strait of Hormuz is simply a body of water in the Middle East that actually carries around 20% of the world's oil. So when the Strait of Hormuz is effectively closed, they cannot ship out oil, which they export around, how many is it, 20 million barrels a day? It's about 20 million barrels a day. Yeah, so the Strait of Hormuz, 20 million barrels a day, which is also about 20% of the world's oil goes through the Strait of Hormuz. So this right now is effectively closed because of this conflict. Because right now, there's no guard, there's no wall, there's no barrier. But Iran, the country of Iran, is threatening to blow up to smithereens any oil tankers that try to carry oil from the Middle East out to the rest of the world. So Iran is using this as a threat to get the United States to try and negotiate. We will blow up the oil tankers so you cannot take our oil in that instance. That's what they're saying. So right now it's effectively closed because if you're an oil tanker and you want to then export your oil to the rest of the world, you will get blown up. And we've seen several oil tankers get blown to smithereens. Now Trump likes to say, show some guts, show some guts. Just go in there, just export the oil, just do it. This is what was said during a conversation about that. President Trump demanded that tanker crews sailing through the Strait of Hormuz, south of Iran, show some guts as oil prices spike, claiming in an interview with Fox News host Brian Kilmeade that there was nothing to be afraid of after the U.S.-Israeli joint operation against the regime. Global oil prices have reached over $100 per barrel early Monday, amid fears of longer-term disruption to energy supplies through the key Strait of Hormuz, which is a big shipping route. Now, as of mid-March, the Strait of Hormuz is effectively, though not officially, closed to most of commercial shipping due to extreme risks from the ongoing Iran-US-Israel conflict. Following threats from Iran's new leadership to keep the waterway blocked, oil tanker traffic has basically collapsed by around 90%. So, while there's no formal legal physical closure, the strait is impassable for most vessels because of attacks, threats, and a halt in war risk insurance. So what's basically happened is you have over 150 oil tankers are reportedly anchored on either side waiting for the situation to improve. So they're just sitting there waiting for the strait not to become dangerous anymore. What this has done is basically stop oil from going in or out of the Strait of Hormuz, which again, 20%, this strait processes around 20% of the world's oil daily, being exported out to the world, to other countries, the United States, to China, and this isn't just oil from Iran. I want to make that very clear. This isn't just oil from Iran. This is also oil from Saudi Arabia, from Iraq, from other countries in the Middle East. 20% of the world's oil flows through here. So if this is closed, then you have a huge risk for all the price of oil going up. So, hold on, my music just got weird. Let's not do that. Let's not do that. So, with all that being said, right now, you have, what is going on? Sorry, whenever I do these green screens, it always gives me some errors, which is really annoying. So right now, the Strait of Hormuz is basically de facto closed. It is de facto closed in that no one dares to go through. Chief analyst at Global Risk Management, a provider for energy market insights, told CBS News. You can't be attacked and you can't get insurance, or you can be attacked and you can't get insurance, or it's extremely expensive. So you just have to wait until the situation gets better. If oil and gas coming from the strait is cut off, that has significant ramifications for the market. While there is no physical blockade, threats from Iranians plus drone and missile attacks mean tankers are not going to go through the strait. Well, there have been some tankers that have attempted to go through, and I'll tell you about how those have been affected. This is what Trump and Brian Kilmeade effectively talked about. He explained that during the call, he asked the president how he planned to get the prices down, then relayed Trump's words. He says, "Tell the oil tankers to get themselves to get in. We have wiped out most of their launchers." Here's exactly what he said. "These ships go through the Strait of Hormuz. They show some guts. There's nothing to be afraid of. The Iranians have no way. We sunk all of their ships." Well, what ends up happening is he goes on to say, "Look, there is a risk in the region. The region is volatile. Their launchers, there's just about 150 left. That's just about 20% of their totals. They can't regenerate. They can't make any more. We are in the region and we need to act quickly on all these types of attacks." Okay, wait, pause. He literally goes from saying that we've wiped out most of their launchers and then says they have about 20% left. Okay. Sorry, I thought he said he had wiped out all of them, so my mistake. Well, I want to point out that the co-host further explained that he believes the Trump administration is sending additional naval assets to escort tankers. So like another ship to then guide these tankers. But reasoned that a tanker had traveled through the strait on Sunday with no problem. All right, interesting. Summing up Trump's call, Brian Kilmeade said that he was like, "Come on guys, just get to it. Come on, just transport that oil. We got this." Several oil tankers that have attempted to pass through the Strait of Hormuz ended up being bombed. Not only is that an environmental disaster for that area, but that basically you've lost people's lives too. Trump told tankers to show some guts, then they were bombed. So he told the commercial ships waiting near the Strait of Hormuz to show some guts. The comment came during a Sunday interview with Fox and Friends co-host Brian Kilmeade, in which the president insisted Iran's military had been effectively neutralized by recent U.S. strikes. Tehran, the capital of Iran, he said no longer had the capacity to threaten maritime traffic through one of the most important oil choke points in the world. There was little to fear. Tankers could move. That was what they were trying to claim. Within days, at least 2 commercial vessels were struck in the Gulf waters. 2 oil tankers burned after attacks near Iran's port of Basra, with at least 1 crew member killed. Other ships reported projectiles or drone strikes in nearby waters. Energy markets reacted predictably. Oil prices surged back to around $100 per barrel as traders recalculated the risks attached to the Strait of Hormuz in a narrow corridor through which the substantial portion of the world's crude oil supply moves each day. So with all this being said, French news station airs incredible split screen of an oil tanker on fire as Trump dances to the YMCA song, which I feel like that itself is just such an encapsulation of the Trump second presidency. It really feels like that. There's so many things on fire right now, yet somehow everyone celebrates it while Trump does a little dance and everyone thinks it's cute. And also 16 and counting oil and cargo ships are growing targets with war with Iran. So this is what it looks like. This is Iran right here. This is a little map. So this Strait of Hormuz is basically a little area in which 20% of world's oil exports go out. This is not just coming from Iran. This is coming from Saudi Arabia. This is coming from Bahrain. It's coming from Qatar. It's coming from the UAE. So a lot of oil, and Iraq, a lot of oil passes through here, out to the world. Right now, Iran is saying that if there's oil tankers that attempt to go through there, we're just gonna bomb them. And with that, it's raising oil prices because scarcity leads to rising prices. Now, you might be thinking, oh, well, the United States, do they really purchase a lot of oil from Iran? No. No, they don't. So what you're looking at, this graphic here, this is a really, really interesting graphic, and I want everyone to really pay attention. If there's any time in the live stream that I really want people to pay attention to, it's actually this. Volumes of crude oil and liquefied natural gas that have flowed through the Strait of Hormuz from the Persian Gulf nations in the past 14 months. So you see that on the left side, these are nations that are exporting oil. So origin, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, the UAE, Kuwait, Qatar, Iran. You see, these are countries where oil is coming from. This is where the oil is going. On the right, the destination. So a lot of oil from Saudi Arabia, Iraq, the UAE, go to places like China, the rest of Asia, India, Japan, and some goes to Korea. Of course, we're down here in the United States. And what's interesting is you're like, oh, well, we don't get a lot of oil from Iran. So why is the Strait of Hormuz being closed then a huge detriment? Well, just because we don't get oil from Iran necessarily, I mean, we get a little bit, but the Strait of Hormuz has a lot of oil coming from Saudi Arabia, Iraq, the UAE, Kuwait, Qatar. So with the Strait of Hormuz effectively being closed, that means that this oil can't get out as easily. You'll say, well, what about if they transport it over land? Yeah, but that's more difficult. They certainly can, but oil tankers themselves, it's easier for ships to process such a big amount than trying to go over the road or even by rail, because that requires whole nother sets of infrastructure. So all of that being said, with volumes of crude oil and liquefied natural gas flowing through the Strait of Hormuz, it's affecting not just the United States, but a lot of the world. I hope you all found that interesting. So, with Biden, they just went up for no reason. Sweetheart, your ignorance is speaking volumes. When Russia attacked Ukraine, that led to also oil and crude oil spiking. I love how I can show data, science, statistics, facts, and explain X, Y, Z, and loudmouth trolls. I don't understand how people have such confidence but say such garbage. I truly don't understand it. Sometimes the people that have the loudest microphones, these rage commenters, end up being the most ignorant, weird people. I just find that dichotomy impressively scary over the internet. This guy really thinks he knows something. Yes, I do, and I'm sharing it with you. If you only had only if you had the ability to listen. How many people we got in here? 62? I love all of you. I love all of you. If you're a quiet listener, say hello and where you're tuning in from. I like to get to know people. So basically, all in all, right now, the Strait of Hormuz, which processes around 20% of the world's oil, crude oil, natural gas, being effectively closed, even though there's no physical blockade, there's no wall, there's no barrier. Right now, Iran is threatening to bomb those oil tankers that pass through there, which means that with scarcity comes rises in price. So right now we're seeing oil prices, diesel, petrochemicals skyrocket because of that scarcity, which then leads to gas being more expensive. We got hello from Northern Italy. Hello. Or I should say, buongiorno. That's how they say hello in Italy. Hi from Texas. We got also from Texas, Oklahoma, Northeast Pennsylvania. Awesome. So with the Strait of Hormuz effectively being closed because there's threats of bombing if they try to go through, it is skyrocketing how much you pay for gas at the pump. And it also affects electricity, because right now, liquefied natural gas is something that we use a lot for electricity. So with that being restricted, it's going to increase the price of how much you pay for your heating, your utility bills. Also, crude oil, natural gas, those kinds of petrochemical products are also something that we use for fertilizers. Fertilizers, which of course help crops grow, then it trickles up to your food prices. Because it's more expensive to produce fertilizer, then it becomes more expensive to then grow crops, becomes more expensive at the grocery store, and the end user then has to pay more for the product. So, all that being said, now you have right-wing media telling people to just justify and accept spiking gas prices as a sacrifice for his war in Iran, which is really about Iran having nuclear weapons or not having nuclear weapons. We have no idea. Now, as all of these trolling commenters pointed out, yes, there were spikes in gas prices during the Biden administration. That was over something else entirely. That was Russia and Ukraine. You see here, it went up severely, massively, because of the Russia-Ukraine situation. Right now, we're also seeing it skyrocket because of all of that. Who knows if it's going to get that high or even higher because of the situation. We shall see. Just laying out the objective facts on the ground there. Now, I do want to pivot to talk about something really interesting. And this will be a really important part of the live stream here. When I initially heard about this conflict, I'm like, okay, how do Iranian Americans feel about this? I'm not Iranian. Someone said that I looked Middle Eastern at one point, and I was like, is that because of my facial shape? I don't know. Someone said I looked Middle Eastern one time, and I was like, oh, okay. I do have some ancestry from Latvia, which is a country next to Russia. So I'm like 25% Latvian or something. Anyway, but most Iranian Americans want diplomacy with Iran. So basically, I asked myself, how do Iranian Americans feel about this? Of course, you have a country that you might be from, the country you live in. How do people that have citizenship or family over there, how do they feel about this? A new survey shows the country's diaspora in the United States is deeply divided over the ongoing war. Though, I will say, more Iranian Americans favor diplomacy. So, recent data by the National Iranian American Council, the NIAC, suggests that a strong majority of Iranian Americans support diplomacy to resolve tensions between the United States and Iran, a finding at odds with a dominant conversation online suggesting that most Iranian Americans are in favor of the Iran war. Let me also dispel something. Right now, a lot of information in right-wing media circles is talking about how Iranian Americans are in favor of what Trump is doing. You're going to see that. You're going to see it on all different types of right-wing platforms. Now, there is some truth in that. There is some truth. There are some Iranian Americans who are very much on board with what is happening. And I understand their reasoning and can agree in some limited fashion. And I'll tell you about that a little bit here in a minute. But also, a majority of Iranian Americans say, no, we don't need war. We don't need to skyrocket escalating, we don't need escalations in war in order for us to achieve diplomacy. We don't need to start bombing things in order to then settle grievances. Now, the data was collected through a survey of 505 Iranian Americans conducted by Zogby Analytics between February 27th and March 5th. Now, I would be really interested to note of any other further polling that has gone through March 5th through March 13th today. Of course, polling takes time, so we'll see how that works. Among the most notable results were that a clear majority of Iranian Americans, around 61.6%, support diplomacy to move towards de-escalation and a negotiated path forward. I will say 61%, that's close to 66%, that's close to 2/3 compared to others. So it is still a majority, though you have around 35%. You have about a third, just over a third of people that are of Iranian descent in this poll say, no, we oppose diplomacy right now. So there is a divide on this approach here. Now, before you are like, why are people justifying violence? Let me break it all down for you. I understand their perspective. Here. So, if anything, a lot of people were surprised because they thought Iranian Americans overwhelmingly favored this war. And NIAC President Jamal Abdi said Wednesday at a press briefing. In fact, it is divided in half. There really is no mandate for the war. So amongst a lot of those people who oppose the war are primarily concerned with the harm inflicted on innocent civilians and the potential for further destabilization of the country, while those in support hope the war will make regime change more likely and reduce threats imposed by Iran's nuclear program, according to the poll. So a lot of Iranian American citizens are like, we need to do diplomacy first before we start just bombing them, which is kind of low-key what Trump did. He just decided to bomb them. They were in the middle of diplomacy peace negotiations, and Trump claims that he had to just preeminently just strike them so that they wouldn't strike us back. That requires, for you to then believe Trump, that requires faith that he's telling the truth. Trump is a known prolific liar, so forgive me if I find it hard to believe him on that instance. But I do want to point out here that during the press briefing, Abdi also said that prominent Iranian Americans have attempted to shape public perceptions about this war, proclaiming the war is the only path that anybody who disagrees is an Iran regime lobbyist. And I will point out that this trauma has been preyed upon by outside interests who want war. We think it's really important to end this predatory relationship and expose the public where our community actually stands. I will also mention there are Iranian Americans who are in favor of what Trump is doing. They're not a majority, but they are about a third or so of Iranian Americans, the public, are actually like, yeah, we actually support the United States bombing Iran. And you're like, huh? What? Well, let me tell you why. Iran has been fighting for a lot of their independence, for women, reproductive rights. Let me get to the actual graphic here. Where was it? Where is it? There it is. So a lot of Iranians in their own country have been fighting for their independence. The protest known as Woman, Life, Freedom began in September of 2022 and continued into early 2023. Authorities did not release the official casualty figures, but independent estimates placed the number of people unalived between 540 and 600. Though, even official figures point to unprecedented violence. Iranian authorities have officially acknowledged 3,117 deaths, categorizing victims as civilians, security forces, or what they call, the Iranian government call their own people, terrorists. While observers consider the breakdown unreliable, the admission itself is unprecedented. So right now, a lot of Iranians are fighting for their independence against this regime. And the Iranian government has unfortunately been unaliving a whole bunch of their own citizens who show resistance. So there is a chunk of Iranian Americans who are saying, look, we don't condone the violence. We don't like the violence. Though we don't support violence, but we feel that there's no other options on the table because the current regime is not open to diplomacy. The government of Iran is not the country where you can do diplomatic stuff. Sometimes it's needed for actions like this. America attacking Iran. We just want the regime gone so people there can have a little bit of freedom. Now, pre-K pause. Trump is not bombing Iran to then help Afghan women with their freedom. Trump is bombing Iran because of nuclear weapons, apparent reports of nuclear weapons. Reports which I have pointed out are half-baked intelligence because it's like, oh, weapons of mass destruction. It's like, we've fallen down that road before, or we've gone down that road before, fallen for that trap, I should say. So all of this being said, there are about a third of Iranians that then say, look, there have been thousands of people unalived and fighting for freedom for Iranian people against their regime. The Iranian government is not, they're not favorable to the United States, they're not favorable to the safety of our citizens, but also they're not favorable to what people protesting for an Iran that is free for all people. So basically, Iran's government is also killing their own civilians who are demanding better. So I do want to put that out there. Like, I don't want people to then sympathize with the Iran government because our government, the United States, has decided to just bomb them. Of course, I don't like violence. But that is why some Iranian Americans are justifying, this war. Still, the majority of them want there to be diplomatic negotiations. It also, in my opinion, in my analysis, it also doesn't help when our country, the United States, just unalives their children by bombing schools. Like, that doesn't help. That's not going after the Iranian government itself. That just hurts the innocent civilians. And if anything, makes Iran more mad. Violence often leads to more violence. So I don't like this kind of action. You can't hear me? I hear him fine as well. Okay, well, maybe it's not me. So, ew, they bombed a school? Yeah. The United States bombed an Iranian school, unalived around 175 elementary school girls, citizens. These were not military bases. They bombed, one of them was a school. I can hear you, no problem. Okay, cool. Basically, all of that being said, right now, and Responsible Statecraft did a really good job at breaking this down, there are people who are very pro-war that are using this reported chunk of a third of Iranians that say, we don't like the violence, but we understand why it's happening. They're using this as a way to then support endless war in the Middle East. So this drama has been preyed upon by outside interests who want war. We think it's really important to end this predatory relationship and expose the public where our community actually stands and encourage members of our community to stand up and be vocal and feel that they can be a full participant in US democracy. So, all of that being said, oil prices are skyrocketing because the Strait of Hormuz is effectively closed. The Strait of Hormuz processes around 20% of the world's entire oil. Now, this oil isn't just going from Iran to the United States. In fact, actually, a lot of the oil that's processed through the Strait of Hormuz comes from Saudi Arabia, Iraq, the UAE, Kuwait, Qatar. We, the United States, get a lot of our oil from places like Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. Though, we don't get a lot of money, or we don't get a lot of oil from Iran. But the Strait of Hormuz processes all this oil from other countries because of how it is laid out geographically. Let me get back to that picture. Hold on, just a second. So you see here, here's Iran, Iraq, Kuwait. This is Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Qatar, the UAE. With the Strait of Hormuz being closed, what ends up happening is oil doesn't get out to other places around the world. It doesn't get refined. Then we have gas. The gas becomes more scarce. The law of supply and demand. When something becomes more scarce, the price of it goes up. So we are seeing prices for oil and gas go up because the Strait of Hormuz is effectively closed. You'll say, well, why is it closed? There's no barrier, there's no wall, there's no bridge or any sort of thing blocking it, but Iran is basically blowing up cargo ships to pass through. So people don't want to lose their lives. Iran is saying, hey, you take the oil and we'll bomb you. But this also started because we, the United States, preemptively bombed Iran first over the idea that they had nuclear weapons, which is half-baked intelligence, and I've talked about it endlessly. This isn't to bomb Iran's government because the United States somehow cares about Afghan women and their plight for true equality and freedom in that country. It's over the idea that Iran poses a nuclear threat to us in the United States. But also, the war is also an excursion and it's short term. So that is the situation in which we find ourselves at. This will also heavily impact not just oil or the amount that you pay for gas. This also impacts your groceries. This also impacts your electricity. Why? Well, simply put, oil and natural gas are fossil fuels also used in the production of energy, electricity. So we have a lot of natural gas power plants here in the United States. Around 42% of our energy comes from natural gas. Where is my statistic showing that? Around 42%. Hold on. I showed it earlier. Where'd it go? 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 Oh my God. Oh my goodness gracious. Why do I do this? I'm so concerned with showing you the evidence that I end up stopping what I'm talking about. I end up stopping just trying to prove to you that it's not a made-up statistic, which is kind of annoying because I only do that because I feel like people that don't like me end up claiming that I don't know what I'm talking about. Where is it? It was the one before this. It was the one before that. You know what? It is what it is. But basically the electricity that, oil is a natural gas fossil fuel that we use for electricity. And around 42% of the liquefied natural gas and oil that we take, that's not correct, hold on. Ugh. I stopped my momentum just to get a statistic, just for people that don't believe me to then somehow still claim that I'm incorrect. Where is it? There we go. There it is. Natural gas power plants generate around 43% of US electricity. So with the Strait of Hormuz being closed, they're not able to then get natural gas and oil to refineries, which then that scarcity leads to a higher price for our energy, for heat, for heating your home, your energy, your utility bill. going up as well. Now, Middle East policy, where oil cannot be exported, also leads to rises in your grocery bills. And you're like, huh? How is that possible? Well, simply put, we also use oil and petrochemicals to produce fertilizer to grow crops for feedstocks. So with all of that, and in addition to transporting and fueling farm equipment, fossil fuels are a primary feedstock in the production of fertilizer, accounting for as much as 80% of the cost of production. Altogether, fuel costs account for between 40 and 50% of all variable costs of growing crops in countries like the United States. So if the price of fertilizer goes up, then that means farms are going to have to charge more for their produce, which means that suppliers, your grocery market, is going to have to charge more for your end product. So literally stopping oil coming from the Middle East then leads to higher prices for your fresh fruits and vegetables. You might try to buy organic as a way to then offset some of that with fertilizers and chemicals and stuff like that, but organic still uses fertilizer in a sense. So anyway, that all being said, I really need to get to work. I really need to get to work. 9:30 is my hard cutoff. I hope all of that has been informative and helpful, because right now there's a lot of information going around about, oh, gas prices are going up, but by how much? Why are gas prices going up? How is this conflict affecting gas prices? So I really hope that my breakdown informed a couple people that you can share. The big takeaway is the Strait of Hormuz effectively being closed then leads to the oil not being exported to be used for, of course, gas, refined for gasoline, or electricity, or even fertilizers. And right now, this is going to affect the global supply chain. And there are a lot of mixed messages around whether this is a war or not a war, and it's crazy. So I appreciate every single one of you. Shout out to my moderators for keeping this a very civil space. If you really enjoyed the breakdown, you really enjoyed the live stream, then please make sure to subscribe. I work super hard to do this content before I go to work. So please make sure to smash that subscribe button. If you're a first-time subscriber, really quickly, it would mean the world if you are to just quickly say that you were a first-time subscriber. Just comment below. I just joined, but I enjoyed it. Thank you. If you are a first-time subscriber, then please say so. Just comment below, because it means a lot to know that I'm reaching people. First-time sub, thank you. It means a lot. Sometimes it's hard for me to see the impact that I'm making. And for some small individual content creators that are in this journalistic space, it means a lot when we get comments that our work means something. Because oftentimes it's just people who are trying to troll. And sometimes it's funny, ha ha ha. But it means a lot to know that the work is going somewhere. Put yourself in my shoes for a second. I'm sitting here alone talking to a camera. Yeah, I can see comments coming in here about XYZ, but it's not people physically in the room with me. It's hard for me to know if I'm making an impact. So that feedback is important. The same way that if a professor is talking to a class, sometimes they actually have the ability to see their class there. Not that I'm thinking that this is school, but for any content creator, sometimes it's good to get positive, visual feedback to know that it's going somewhere, you know? I'm just confused why you're defending the theocratic patriarchy of Iran. I'm not. If you listen to my content, you would know that I'm not. I talked about how there's the plight of the Iranian people fighting against that and how they've been unalived by their own government. Before you put words in my mouth, maybe you should actually listen to before you put words in my mouth, maybe you should actually listen to what my position is before you assume things based on partisan convenience. The live stream will get posted after it's finished, so I would encourage that you listen to that. Anyway, I appreciate every single one of you. Yes, I love all of you so much. Thank you for the video. Thank you, Jazzy Cakes. That's a fun name. Shout out to my amazing moderators. I need to get to work. I am way past my hard cutoff. So just remember that you are beautiful, you are loved, you are valid, you are strong, and you are fierce. Don't let anyone or anything or any algorithm ever, 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 ever dim your shine. I love all of you so much. Bye!